I forgot myself on mute. So I'm guessing pretty much everyone in the chat already know you. Um, you can still present yourself since it's Remembrance Day. I know it's not exactly the same in the States and what it is in Canada, but today is still a day to remember our war veterans and thank them for all the awesome work they've done to keep our country safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll put a hat on because last night Marie-Lynn didn't recognize me till I put the hat on because I shaved my head. Um, yeah, I'm Tracy Hand, T-Hand141 Homestead. I was in the Army from December of 1989 to April or May of 1992. I fought in Operation Desert Storm. And this it's veterans it's Veterans Day and Remembrance Day in Canada, and I just want to say thank you to everybody that served and to all the families. A lot of people don't realize that the families of the soldiers, they serve too. They whether it's just missing the soldier or all sorts of sacrifices that the family has to go through. So yeah.
Gonna say hi. Amanda was in the chat. Marilyn, Lynn is there. Melissa. I don't think I forgot anyone yet. And by the way, Amanda is a new premium squash member. I didn't have a chance to create the video, but I think she deserves a proper mention here. You can go check her out. Marilyn, if you have time, if you want to, you can share a channel here. So, what does this day represent for you?
Veterans Day is on the states side is a time I remember a family that I haven't seen in years. When you're in the military, you form bonds with people under sometimes really stressful conditions, and you never really lose that. I mean, if I had some of my teammates, some of my squad members call me today, I would go help them in a heartbeat. And on the Remembrance Day, in the Gulf War, I lost a couple friends, and I just remember them, and I remember one of them is named Daniel Davila, and Specialist Kid. I didn't know his first name. I didn't actually know Specialist Kid very well, but Davila, I remember. He was something else. The day before we first went into combat, the day before he died, actually, he was walking by the back of my vehicle, and I was about to light up a cigarette, and he says, "Those will kill you." And I said, "Well, you got to die of something." And he said, "Yeah, well, here's a stick of gum, smart aleck." And well, he said smart ass, but and the next day was the day that he lost his life, and I just remember that camaraderie that we had was just so amazing, and that's what I remember about my whole military experience. But then the actual when things came down to the nitty gritty, any one of us would have laid our lives down for the other one, and still to this day those bonds hold strong.
So there was a lot of negative, but obviously there was still some positive out of it because you, like you said, you made like a second family out of it, and probably something that you're gonna have forever.
Oh yeah. I sometimes I want to look and find out what those guys are doing, but I don't want to intrude in their lives. Um, they we were young and dumb, and there are parts of my time in Europe that one morning I woke up in a stairwell and I'm like, all right, I made it back to post. I walked out and I was in somebody's apartment building in downtown Bremen, and late for formation. It was like 9 o'clock, and by the time I made it back to the post, uh, they covered for me. They said I'd gone on sick call when I had just got blitz drunk and forgot where I was. But that family, that I mean, we were all young, 17, 18, 19. Uh, some of us were in our 20s. I remember there was one guy that he was in his 30s, and he was in my squad for a little while, and he was in my platoon, and it was just, it was amazing because we all gave each other crap. We all fought with each other constantly, but we would all be the first to jump to defend each other at the same time. We could mess with each other, but no one else could, or they would be dealing with all of us. And that was really cool. That uh,
Like real brothers.
yeah, yep,
Same thing. I
yep.
remember when we were younger, my brother and I would hit each other with hockey sticks, break hockey sticks in front of each other's legs. But if a fight was starting somewhere between me and someone else, or between my brother and someone else, you could be sure the two other brothers were right there.
Yeah.
Well, I remember having a brawl in the soccer game, and my mom was there. We were playing in the semifinals, and I ran for the guy, and he was a bit bigger than me, so he was kind of on top of me, and he punched me right in the face. And as soon as he punched me in the face, my brother was running right towards him and kicked him in the face. And it's not something that I'm necessarily proud of, but I remember standing up as soon as he hit me, and my two brothers were right there. And I remember getting home, and my mom came inside, and she was kind of pissed. And my dad looked at her and he's like, "What happened?" She's like, "They had a brawl. The three of them?" "Yep." And my dad was just like, "Well, at least they got each other's back." It's all that
Yeah.
he. And then I'm guessing that's probably what it was. Like, I mean, you go to war, it's 24/7, a risk all the time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We had some times in the sandbox. It was because we arrived in country in Saudi Arabia on January 8th, and we didn't actually move out of the port of Al Jabal. Um, it was getting towards the end of January when we actually moved out of the port and into the desert, and then there was a lot of waiting around, and it, I had a tape recorder and I made tapes to send home, and my mom gave them to me. I got to pull them out and listen to them again sometime. But it was a dry country. We couldn't have alcohol, and so other than the guys who were going through the DTs, um, it was pretty interesting to see the ways that we dealt with things. I went gray. I started going gray overnight just once we actually hit the combat, and we kept saying it was going to make a boring movie. thank God for Meg Ryan and Denzel Washington. They made a decent movie out of it.
They're good actors.
Yeah, yeah.
My husband did 3 tours to Afghanistan. His third tour, we could video chat. It was so scary to watch the screen shake from the bombs hitting his camp. We would have to pause to hit the floor. Wow, that must have been scary. And you're watching us on the big screen, Lynn, from what I saw on Messenger. Uh, David, if you're there, thank you so much for all you've done.
Absolutely.
And thank you to everyone else, Tracy and everyone else. If there's anyone watching the replay or anyone in the background uh, in the Army, just thank you. It's because of all of you that we can actually be here and do what we're doing now when you think of it. So just quick hi, Dave is here, Michael and Heritage is here, and Krubby the Beagle. Venkat, I think is your name, right? We will remember them. Yes, I was at my Legion today. I see it on YouTube there. It takes a while to get here.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have my other screen up because for some reason my internet, which it's stormy, it rained all day here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know. There's something about it. I did serve with some Canadians at one point. What really stands out in my mind, because being in Europe, when I was in Germany, I was at the Pack and Combine Club, which was the enlisted man's club, and what really sticks out in my mind, this guy was huge, and I believe he was in uniform, so that's how we knew he was Canadian. But he was standing at the bar, and this British guy walked up to him, and he said, "You got a bloody fag?" And the Canadian guy is like, "What?" He said, "A fag." And he thought he was calling him a derogatory homophobic name. And just the Canadian guy just trumped the British guy. The British guy was all alone. He didn't have any, but the British guy, we knew he was just asking for a cigarette. But the Canadian guy just trounced him. So that was my experience with the Canadian military. We learned, yeah, you don't mess with them. They can be set off very easily.
We're not all like that. Not everyone is like that. I was just talking about a brawl we had at soccer game. See, we're crazy. Is there any stories you'd like to tell? Maybe like anything you remember. You don't have to go into bad stuff. If you can stay anything funny, anything that you remember.
Oh my goodness. I told you about Davila offering me a stick of gum rather than to smoke a cigarette the day, and I had told him, we're all going to die sometime, and the next day he was he was killed, and some of the things I remember that on the night of the 60th, we went in on a counter reconnaissance mission. We crossed the berm into Iraq early, and we got the nickname the Fighting 41st. And we actually had some friendly fire that night. It was Black Zero, which meant that there was no starlight. It was the first time I ever encountered it. There was no starlight. It was raining. Everything was the same temperature. So even on the thermals, all you got was a red screen. And when we had to move, the only way you could tell where one of the other vehicles was by their exhaust would be hot coming out of the vehicle, and they called it Black Zero. So it stopped a whole battalion. We were attached to the 1st Infantry Division, and the next morning, I remember when the dawn broke, before the sun was actually up, we had vehicles facing every which way because nobody knew what they were doing. And with the tracked vehicles, we were in the Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, and there was just no way. Apparently, in the sand, if the driver just pulled left to correct a little bit, it would really literally turn your vehicle. I've got pictures of the burning oil well fires. We camped out not under them, but within a mile of them. Our vehicles were all black with soot, for about 2 weeks after the ceasefire, and we began clearing the bunkers. There were bunkers complexes everywhere, and we were after the ceasefire, and we were on a clearing mission, clearing bunkers, and you would just, after about 50 or 60 bunkers with no one in them, you would just start walking up to the bunker. You'd lay your support down. I was a dismounted team leader, and you'd lay your support down, and I would throw the grenade in. The grenade would blow, and then my saw gunner would go in and spray, and then we would catalog what weapons or stuff like that was in there and what country it came from. Unless it was from certain countries, then we didn't write it down. We weren't supposed to write it down. Yes, the 141, T-Hand141 is for the 1st and 41st Infantry Regiment. So then we got tasked with setting up a EPW camp, a POW camp, basically. And the tankers cleared an area, and I was up in the gun, and my driver was on the back ramp that came down, and he was eating MRE, and he's like, "Hand, put the turret around the rear deck now, and I'm like, what in the world? So I swirled around. We had people coming out of the bunkers surrendering to us. Apparently tankers don't get off their vehicles, so all inside our perimeter, which was supposed to be safe, we had people surrendering to us. The enemy they were fully armed and capable. They could have just toasted us. I remember one of them went up to one of the, I believe he was a specialist at that time, Mariquin, and he said, "I'm hungry, I'm dirty." And Mariquin said, "So am I. Get on your face." It was funny at the time. We did feed them and help them out, but it was just something that struck me as funny is that this secured area it had more enemy in it than it had friendlies.
I did not know that either, Marilyn. I have a few friends. I invited one over tonight and he couldn't make it, but I have some friends telling me all kind of horror stories, really, about what's going on. And for a guy like me, and probably a lot of people here as well, all we have in mind about what's going on out there really is what we see in the movies. And I'm pretty sure, how can I say that? The bad is probably as bad, but the good is probably worse, right?
Yeah. my experience, which is kind of a different. I mean, our actual what do you call it? Sanctioned combat was 3 days, but then afterwards we had literally more uh, contact with the enemy and combat during the cleanup phase because we had bypassed our own supply lines. So we were drinking captured water. They brought us these big, I mean, we stacked it like cordwood, the water, but they said, don't drink it. It's captured from the enemy. It might be tainted. Uh, but then the water truck would go by and they would see all that water out there. So they'd just keep going and wouldn't stop to bring us drinkable water. So we were drinking captured water. Um, and but for the most part, it was three months of extreme boredom interrupted by maybe 3 weeks of intense butt pucker. Yeah, yeah, I did. It was oh yeah, they hated Saddam. Um, uh, I hated Saddam because Davila and Kidd were killed because we were there and because of him. I will say I watched his execution and I felt bad for him. The way they hung him with the deriding and it was just a horrible way to die for a soldier, for anyone. But if anybody deserved it, he did. Joker. Well, I've seen a little on TV. Yeah, Full Metal Jacket. That is actually one of the movies that made me want to join the army. And the fact that I was, uh, I moved from New York to Florida to live with my real father, and I was called into the principal's office, and he said, "Yeah, they can't get you enough. In New York, you need 21 credits to graduate. In Florida, you need 23." He says, "You're not going to graduate with your class, so you'll be here till January." And I, not quite politely, told him what he could do with his diploma, and I went outside and got on the payphone and I called Staff Sergeant Ricky D. Pearson was my recruiter, and I was in the junior ROTC. And he comes, the principal came out and said, "You don't ever swear at me, yada yada yada." I said, "Excuse me, I'm talking to my recruiter." And my dad made a deal with the principal that I could stay in school till we got the results of my GED test. Oh wow, yeah, yeah. That my hat's off to you, David. It's amazing the atrocities that man can do to man. I couldn't imagine. I've heard stories and such of the Iraq War, the Afghani War, Kosovo, where it was one of the in my war, for the most part, where we were, our enemy was pretty much uniformed. They had their uniform, and you knew who the enemy was. My heart goes out to the guys out there fighting an enemy that blends in with the civilian population. Equal opportunity employee. Yeah, that's it's. I don't know. I joined when I was 17 with a permission of my mother, and I was very gung ho. I really loved the Army. I was really good at the military. While we were in Desert Storm, they gave me my sergeant stripes. Basically, I went into an E5 board and gave them my name, rank, serial number, and the maximum effective range of uh, the Bradley's 25 millimeter gun, and they gave me my sergeant stripes. And then um, when we got back to Germany, they took them back because they said it was a sham board, which it was. I did not, earn them, but they needed me to have them so I could be. They needed me to be a dismounted team leader. Um,
Hello, Lewis. Thank you very much for stopping by. My dad was on standby for weeks for Desert Storm. The roller coaster of he is going, no, he's not, was really hard. Now I know how hard it was on my mom. I was in high school. And I can only imagine back in 1939 when the World War II was on and they had to go from houses to house just to go and grab people and, like,
yeah.
you're going to war. You have no choice. And I remember one of our school teacher, I don't know how true that was, obviously, because I wasn't there, but she was telling us that, some people were uh, cutting their arms off because they didn't want to go. They'd rather stay home with an arm missing than go to war and risk not coming back home. And, like, from what you can see from movies like Saving Private Ryan, this is the kind of stuff that happens. I'm pretty sure where they would come home to the family and have to tell them the bad news.
Yeah. Um, it, I've always wondered, in America, to dodge the draft, people would go to Canada. Where do Canadians go to dodge the draft?
I don't know.
Always wondered
I don't
that.
know.
Um, uh, being ta- yeah. Um, honestly, I was in the Bradley Infantry Fighting Vehicle, which is it's a armored personnel carrier with a 25 millimeter chain gun and a tow missile and a regular 7.62 machine gun. When during the actual war, I was before, leading up to it, and during the actual war, I was a gunner, which it brings everything close up. A guy at 800 meters, it's like from here to my screen away, similar to that. And then after the ceasefire, they made me a dismounted team leader so that other people could get experience in the turret. And so I got both. And the military, I don't know, I was really gung ho. I really loved it. I believe I was meant to be a soldier. But because I loved it so much, because I excelled at it, I absorbed everything. And I think that's one reason I had problems 10 years later after I got out of the military. I just absorbed everything about it. And I think it messed me up. When you're a 17-year-old, or 18 I turned 18 in basic training on KP. I turned 19 in Germany on KP duty in the motor pool, and I turned 20 in the Port of Al Jabal on guard duty. And but the things we sang in cadence when we were running, some of it was sick. It was really, but you have to do that. You have to prepare these men for the things that they are going to see when they're in the combat. Uh, and uh, I think back, and I'm glad that they made me sick in the head, I guess you could say, because I really think it helped us survive. Um,
Melissa saying his 10-year-old wants to make a career being in the army. That's something when I was younger I was thinking about, but then just the yelling. I don't know if it's like the movies at all, but just be in line and have someone yell at you, I would punch him in the face and leave. Like I wouldn't be able to stay there.
um, I have to say I don't know how the Canadian Army is. They were experimenting when I got out of the military. I heard they were experimenting with stress-free basic training. When we got to the barracks in Fort Benning, Georgia, um, these guys, and it's real. They are literally like, they're whatever they had for breakfast, you tasted it because they were right in your face. I don't think I could have landed a punch on any of my drill sergeants. They were top notch. In the United States military, you have to be invited to become a drill instructor. You can't say I want to do that. They have to ask you to do that. Um, yeah, the Bradley is an awesome thing. I had Airborne Ranger in my contract when I joined the service, and we got about 3 weeks into basic training, and they said, "Hey, who here has airborne jump school?" Uh, and a bunch of us raised our hands, and they said, "Well, something was going on that they only had 3 spots for our platoon." And the first 3 that got to the end of the building, where the drill sergeants were, won it, and I was on the other side. My bunk was way down the hall, so I lost that. And they said, "Well, you can get out on breach of contract, or you can pick a new MOS." They took um, they took me to a place called Red Cloud Range on Fort Benning, and they showed us the Bradley, and it was the coolest thing ever. They had their smoke generator on, so there's smoke billowing out of the exhaust, and they were firing over the rear or over the side deck, and they hit a jump and kept firing while they were in the air. And it wasn't until I was in Germany and a gunner myself, I thought, you do not want a track vehicle to ever leave the ground. We were in Bergen, and my driver didn't know what he was doing, so he would push the gas and let off and push you. Well, when you're up higher, the leverage, the force puts um, your forehead right into the brow pad, and I came out all bruised and stuff and chased him around the Bradley. Uh, yeah, thump, 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 thump. Yeah, the 3-round burst. Uh, I believe to this day that Davila and Kidd, I can't. I believe they were friendly fire incidents. I see where um, Darren put. I believe they were friendly fire. Davila, I'm sure of it. That was an Apache helicopter. They put the tape, released the tape of the radio contact, and our battalion commander was our task force commander, and he had the Apache countdown: 13 tanks, 13 Bradleys, 13 tanks. Or no, it was 13 Bradleys, 13 tanks, 13 Bradleys. and then there were two on the end and forward, and they kept counting it down, and finally the colonel from the rear echelon said told the Apache to fire. And because I'm in the army. And finally, our battalion commander said, "Sir, if you can run my task force any better than I can, please come up here and relieve me of command." And finally, they ended up firing, and it was a Davila's vehicle was escorting a forward observer vehicle, and the Apache just turned it. The next morning we drove by, and it was melted pools of aluminum. Yeah, tank ruts. Oh, dry. Yeah, it is bad. You can get stuck in a tracked vehicle. We were on an exercise in northern Germany, and there was a I think it was a 10-ton weight limit on a bridge. So the first platoon leader decided to go around the bridge because it was just a little creek. Well, you have a 26-ton vehicle, and it went nose first into the creek and then leveled out and just sank. It was straight up on one side bank and straight up on the other side. They had to be pulled out, and everybody else drove right across the bridge, and we were waving at them and stuff. It was funny.
Just a quick hello to Glenda and Janice, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you very much for stopping by. We are talking with Tracy from T-Hand141 about some stories of when he was in the army.
I don't know why your Remembrance Day was chosen November 11th, but in the United States, World War I ended on November 11th at 11 p.m. That's when the ceasefire began for World War I.
That could be the reason.
Yeah.
My dad was a drill sergeant. Cool.
Absolutely.
No problem, Glenda. I'm just happy you're here. Not for me.
Friendly fire was... Yeah, the challenge and password, you gotta have that. After we crossed the berm on our counter reconnaissance mission, we were coming, because there's the border between Saudi Arabia and Iraq was like a 10-foot sand berm, and we actually had bulldozers that made ways for us to go through it. And on the way back in, we stopped, as you do, to do the clearances to return into friendly territory. And we were told to get out of the vehicle and remove the grenades from the grenade launchers. We had always been taught, and we now know still, that you don't remove the grenade launchers the grenades from the grenade launchers. They are white phosphorus grenades, and the only way to unload them is to fire them. So I got outside of the vehicle, and I remember hearing a loud noise and feeling a vibration, and I turned around, and there was a sand plume over by Sergeant Dixon's vehicle. And then there was another one. Everything went into slow motion. And Sergeant Witherspoon, my vehicle commander, said, "Hand, get in the vehicle. Now I put a hand on either side of my hatch and went to swing my feet in, and he reached up through my hatch, grabbed me by the neck, pulled me down. I'm upside down, and told me to put the vehicle over the rear deck. I still don't know whether it was friendly artillery, enemy artillery, but we did a forced passage of lines where you put your turret over the rear deck. We had these big bright orange panels on the back of the turret, and we just crossed into friendly territory. Yeah, I joined when I was 17, and got out when I was 21. I celebrated my 21st birthday in Fort Irwin, California. And we were babies. They set us free in Germany. As an 18-year-old in Germany, we could drink, smoke. Everything is legal in Germany almost. And then after the war, when I came home on leave, I couldn't even go into a bar to drink because I was too young still.
Yeah. Because of an International Day of Remembrance, we're in the U.S. but stationed overseas, World War One. True did not fire back. They figured it had the other two operators in the rear of the vehicle would have been killed from the Kurds.
Yeah.
So what my buddies told me is the Kurds were always high.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that while we were waiting. It, it it was amazing. You get a pickup truck pull up, and this guy would start pulling out rugs and selling you rugs and stuff, and then the officers would chase them away, and then we would have um, uh, camels. Actually, they're literally camel herders would push their camels right through our. Which I don't know how you drive camels or whatever, but the like 30 camels would run through our perimeter, and the men would be with their camels, and finally we got to a point where we would drop the camels. Once they lost a couple camels, they would turn them around and go the other way.
Lois, in about 15 minutes, John at Willow Grove is going live, apparently to give the results from Shed Wars 2022. I will post the link before I leave. Invite you guys to go over, and if you want to check it out. I don't know if we're gonna go for 2 hours today. I want to be there too, so
Yeah.
I told Tracy we'll try to keep it between an hour and an hour and a half.
You which team were you on?
Homestead Aquarius.
Homestead Aquarius. Okay, so they're gonna win, right?
I hope so. I'm thinking that no matter what happens, John is going to find a way to put his team on top.
You're gonna get a penalized 50 pounds for
Just for saying that.
mistagging your moose as a bear.
I've lost a number of friends and clients. One of the worst was when I had my business. A client dad phoned me to cancel an order because it was for his son who was just killed. That must be awful. As a parent, especially. Thinking about Shed Wars next year. Awesome. Encourage you to apply for sure. It was hard work. It was stressful at some points, but no matter what happens, I'm glad of what I did. Even if I don't go in Shed Wars, I want to do the same thing next year. Weigh everything and give it my best. I'm gonna win. Go Team Aquarius. I'm trying to convince a lot of people to join. Maybe Tracy, Marilyn is thinking about it. Annie's thinking about it. The more the merrier. If we can have influence on people all over the world about gardening and homesteading and growing their own food, it's all for the best.
I haven't even been hunting this year yet, which the rut is supposed to be starting. As warm as it's been, I don't know if it'll be a late rut or a weak rut, but I need to get out there uh, and do some actual time in the woods. Uh, I got a pretty good idea where I can go and definitely fill my doe permit, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But if you have how much acres on your property?
I've got 20 acres, but there aren't there aren't. I know that there was a doe and a fawn, and I know that they passed through my land. My land
Okay.
is like a big triangle with a lot of road frontage, and I the house is on the deeper side of it, and then it narrows down on the other end. But there's not a whole lot. I do have a tree stand up, and I have called deer into the tree stand. But I think since the Amish moved in, and with the Amish, brown is basically down. They are. I'm a meat hunter. I don't. You can't eat antlers, and if I have a doe permit or with the muzzle loader, I can get a deer of either sex. Um, then fill my freezer. But they take it to the nth degree. I make sure it's an older deer, got a longer nose and a more of a rectangle body rather than a square. They'll drop a fawn in a heartbeat. Uh,
Yes, Glenda, you don't hunt, you can garden, and yeah, the eggs count. It's anything that you can harvest yourself, that you know how to preserve for you and your family, your household, basically. Um, for example, I went and foraged some mushrooms, fiddleheads. I went fishing, went hunting. All that counts toward my final weight. I have a garden. I have some animals, chickens, turkeys. All that adds up. It's all food that's not coming from the store, basically. I've been hunting the last couple of weeks. Have you seen anything? You're hunting deer or grouse or bear? So Darren's planning to go tomorrow. You don't have a doe tag, though. You're only allowed for bucks.
you, Darren, you butchered a whole cow in 4 hours. That amazes me. That was Darren, right? That I pretty
Was
sure
it
that.
4 hours?
Um, I don't know where my.
No problem, Glenda.
Why are you all wet? Have you been outside? Yeah, I cleaned the litter box for you.
Let me get the link. Let me put the link. I'll put the link for Shed Wars live stream. It starts in about 7 minutes now. Um, is there anything you would like to say to the veterans out there, to your friends, to your family, to anyone that about today?
No, just thank you for your service. If you are a family member of someone who served, thank you for allowing them to serve and supporting them as they serve. Um, this world is a dangerous place, and there are bad actors everywhere. And whether you served in peacetime or served in combat, um, freedom is not free. And thank you for paying that price, whether it was a loved one who went overseas or who served and maybe came back different. Thank you for that freedom. It's a gift that we mistreat so much anymore, and I am just so grateful for the men and women in uniform. Yeah, thank you.
I totally am on board with what you just said. I've been hunting deer, coyotes. Coyotes are open season and freezer camp for the deer. Darren's saying they harvested the cow in 4 hours, killed, dressed, skin, and put 6 parts into cold room. We didn't make it into steak, etc. yet.
That's still a lot of work.
Yeah, still pretty cool.
Yeah.
Full-time caregiver and former military spouse. Thank you for not forgetting the families. Yeah, I really think that during time of war, it's all a big team, right?
Yeah.
Have the family members are not forgotten. They do their part. We have a lot of women that do their part as well, and
Absolutely. Yeah, my mom was glued to the TV. She said, I guess she told family that just in case Tracy makes it on the news. I tried to tell her when I got a chance to call, because we didn't have cell phones back then. And I tried to tell her, Mom, they're not going to film us. They're not letting people know where we're at.
yeah. Let's hope we don't have to go back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you, Glenda. You do your part. We saw a huge buck last weekend in the big field just down the road from us. And the thing is, if you had a rifle, you'd be gone. You won't see them if you have a rifle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
Absolutely. I tell you, the care packages that we got. My mom sent me some venison jerky. I think I got like 3 pieces out of 4 or 5 pounds of venison jerky that my mom sent me when we were in the desert. It was delicious, and everybody loved it.
Advocate with the U.S. national nonprofit. It's a military family thing.
Nice.
Awesome. We'll always thank our vets for it. Yeah, it's true that they're in the front line, but still, I think it's important to remember the whole team, everyone that was there to make our freedom possible. So that I'm gonna go with Tracy and thank everyone. Case of Oreos, awesome.
Yeah.
Before we finish, I know it might sound weird, but I say we take a moment of silence in their honor and just, yeah. Thanks, everyone. Okay. It's funny, but when I had my store, we used to send care packages to friends and clients overseas. They always loved it and would send amazing messages.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I sent extra treats to my hubby so we could share. Okay, so I'm gonna head over to John Will It Grow for the live stream. I'm gonna put the link here again, and I'm gonna thank you again, Tracy, for being here with me and for
Absolutely.
everything you've done for your country and mine. And yeah, let's remember all the sacrifices that were done so that we could have the life we have now. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. And yeah, we'll see what happens in Shed Wars.
Can't
Take
wait.
care.